Do you flip property out of the state in which you live? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down how to build an out-of-state flipping structure for your real estate business. All right, let's get started. Okay, so if you're flipping out of state, let's say you live in California, but you're flipping property in South Carolina or in Oklahoma, and you're wondering, hey, how best to put together that type of structure to ensure that I've got asset protection and I'm minimizing my taxes to the greatest extent as possible? Well, that question comes up all the time. Now, obviously, you don't want to set up LLCs in the state in which you reside if the property is held somewhere else because, A, setting the entities up in your state may be expensive, may create additional tax burdens for you in your state, depending on how they tax business entities there. So what we want to do is find a structure that is minimizing our overall tax scenario, plus giving us that great protection that entities can provide. So what do I like to do when it comes to setting up these types of structures? Well, first off, I'm going to set up a corporation for flipping, and that is going to be set up in the state in which you reside in, because that's where you're going to be pulling salary out of. Now, there is some debate there. Some people who flip completely out of state choose not to set this up in the state where they reside. So, for example, if I live in Washington State, I may set up a Washington LLC, and because I'm flipping, it's either going to be a C or S Corp for federal tax purposes. Now, the reason I say it's going to be in Washington is because you're technically doing business here if you're pulling a salary out of that business, which you will be doing if you're flipping or you're wholesaling out of state. Now, I know plenty of investors who do not set it up in the state in which they reside. If they say, hey, if I'm not conducting any property flips here in this state, I'm just going to set it up in Wyoming and pay myself a salary. Well, that works too, right? As long as no one knows about it and you're doing it that way, it works. And the thing, though, to keep it off the radar is that you have to run your own payroll. You can't use a payroll service in Washington State because Washington State, whatever, if you're using the bank, they're going to require that you register the company here. So I'm not going to go into how you get around the state taxes because it's really, you should be filed there, and it's not the intent of this video, although I did just tell you how you could do it. What I want you to realize is that you're going to have this company set up in Washington. Now, let's say that my flip is going to take place in Oklahoma. So here's that Oklahoma property. Well, as you know that when you're flipping property many times, you don't know where that next deal is going to come from. Maybe I'm going to flip a deal in North Carolina. All right, so I found a deal there, or I'm working with a wholesaler who's kicking me the deals that I intend to flip. So where do you create the structures to hold these deals? Because you're not going to hold them right here. All right, we know that if I held all the deals inside of this Washington corporation, that's going to be problematic because if anything goes wrong, then they're going to sue the corporation itself. So one strategy is that people will put together LLCs in the state where the property is located. Now that's all fine and good, and you can do that, but the problem with setting up an Oklahoma or North Carolina LLC is that you have to know that your next deal is going to be in Oklahoma, or you have to know that it's going to be in North Carolina. And in my experience in investing, I don't know where my deals are going to come from necessarily. I may be targeting a certain area, but if deal flow is drying up there because sellers are just asking too much and I can't get the deal, and then something pops up in a different state and I jump on it, that opportunity, well, having a North Carolina LLC isn't the right entity for making an investment in Indiana. And that has to do with, the LLC in North Carolina could be at a different tax rate to owning Indiana property, and just can create a lot of confusion. So if you're investing and you're flipping out of state, then what I like to do is set up my flipping LLCs over here in Wyoming. So this is what I'll do. I set up Wyoming LLCs, and they're owned 100% by the parent corporation. Now, let's assume that I'm going to buy a property here in North Carolina. This is my North Carolina flip. I will buy it with my Wyoming limited liability company. Okay, so people have told me before when I've taught this strategy at my 3-day tax and asset protection workshop, this intensive workshop that I teach 4 times a year. When I bring this strategy up about using Wyoming, I'll have at least 1 or 2 people in the audience say, well, my CPA said that LLC needs to be registered in the state where the property is located. Okay, your CPA or even your attorney has told you this. There is nothing that requires you to register the Wyoming LLC in North Carolina to buy that property. I'll tell you what, I've dealt with title companies at least 15 to 20 times where I'll get on the phone with one of our platinum clients and their title company on a closing that they're trying to do, and the title company will tell them that the Wyoming LLC has to be registered, fill in the blank state. I'll ask them, point to the state law that requires an out-of-state entity to register in your state before it can take title to property. And they never can. They've never once been able to point to a law. And so then I'll speak to them and I'll typically say, well, tell you what, your job is to close, right? My job is to advise. You're not an attorney. I'm not a closing agent. You do your job. I do my job. Let's close this deal. And then they always close in the name of the Wyoming LLC. So they close it in the LLC. Now you're wondering, why am I telling you to set up a Wyoming LLC for flipping out of state? Because number one, we don't know where the deals are going to come from. Just set up a few Wyoming LLCs. Just make that your home state. The benefit of Wyoming is it's inexpensive to create your LLCs there. That's number one, okay? Inexpensive. The second reason why I like Wyoming is anonymity. Okay, what I mean by that is that when I set up these LLCs, no one's aware that I am the owner of the LLC. That is my company. My flipping company is the owner of this limited liability company, because Wyoming does not collect any information on the members of an LLC. So unlike North Carolina, Indiana, where my company's name would be shown on the Secretary of State's website, it's not shown anywhere. It's completely private. So I like that with my flips. I don't want people to know that I'm in a market flipping. I don't want them to see my company. So I want to keep that privacy there. So it offers anonymity, and it offers great asset protection. So I'll set up several of these LLCs. I call them shelf LLCs. I'm just looking over my shoulder to see if you could see them. In fact, if you could, on my camera right there, I have a few on my shelf that I've already set up, ready to go for my next deal. So I always have a few available at any time to close on. Now, I take title in the name of this LLC. Now, here's where you may have to record this LLC in the state where the property is located. When you're going to sell, okay, when you're getting ready to sell the property, that's when you may need to register it. Now, why am I saying you may need to register it? It has nothing to do with the ability to sell this property and close. You can do that with a Wyoming LLC. In fact, I've got clients that have been using this strategy since I started teaching it 14 or so years ago. They use it successfully, and they never register their Wyoming LLC in the state where the property's flipped from. But I have other clients that must register it there. And the difference between these two clients is that one client is flipping in a state that does not have a withholding tax, whereas client number two is flipping in a state where there is a withholding tax if the property is sold from an out-of-state business entity. So if you are flipping in a state that has a withholding tax on out-of-state business entities that's based upon the gross sale price, my recommendation to you is to register this entity. So right before closing, you would do a foreign filing of that LLC, let's say in North Carolina. So now it's a Wyoming LLC that's registered to do business in North Carolina, and then you flip out of there. So that's when I would look at registering that company. Now there's one other time in which you'll register as well, and that is if there's any litigation. Let's say that you've got a contractor that has flaked on you and you're considering suing that contractor. Then you need to foreign file as well to bring that claim. So those are the two situations that come up when it comes to flipping out of state. But I really like to keep it simple. I know that I'm going to create all my holding companies for my flips in Wyoming. So I set up a few LLCs there. They're all owned by my parent company, that Washington corporation in my example, and I flip right out of there, and all the profits from my flips flow into my Washington LLC S or C corporation, and that's what files the federal tax return. All those other LLCs do not file federal tax returns because each of them is disregarded. Hey, if you like this video, be sure to smash the like button. If you want to learn more about flipping, about setting up structures, We teach a great event every Saturday. It's called our Tax and Asset Protection Workshop. I've got a link to the show notes below where you're at this event. You're going to learn how to set up your LLCs, whether or not it's an LLC, a land trust, or a corporation for your real estate investing, the benefits of using Wyoming. You're also going to discover the tax side of investing as well, and how the tax code can actually put more money back in your pocket if you learn how to harness it to your benefit. There's a whole other side to investing that so many people miss out on, because here at Anderson, we bring together both the CPAs and the attorneys in-house, which I know is unique, all right? Not a lot of firms do this, and in so doing, what we have found in reviewing individual real estate investors' tax returns, so many of them overpay in taxes every year because their local professional just does not understand the benefit of using entities and how to prepare returns to put more money back in their client's pocket. Definitely jump on that event if you want to learn more. It's a free event. It's taught on Saturdays. There's a link in the show notes below where you can get registered. And on that event, I guarantee you, you'll leave there in a better place than when you started. Look forward to seeing you there.